Hold on one second. Proceed with the motion. It's been seconded. It's been properly moved and seconded, item F will become E and E will become F. This can be done by roll call vote. Any discussion? Everybody's mind is set? Secretary Perkins?
Yes.
Trustee Booth?
Yes.
Vice President McIntyre?
Yes.
Trustee Rutherford?
Yes.
Trustee King?
Yes.
Treasurer Luna?
Yes.
And myself, 7 yes and 0 no. Before we move forward, it is the policy of this board that everyone has an opportunity to speak, and sometimes people come in, they probably don't know our process. The person that did not get to speak for public speaking, I want to give you your 3 minutes. I hear that there was a person that wanted to speak and did not get a chance to speak. Normally with public speaking, you can stand in line and we can call you as you come up. And that's pretty much how it was. So forgive me if we didn't know that someone else wanted to speak. Proceed.
Good evening, everyone. I was coming up to address an issue. My daughter attends Southwestern Academy, and a week before Christmas break,
Your name, please.
my name is Courtney Rutherford.
Okay.
And a week before Christmas break, I understand that Southwestern has the no cell phone policy there, and my daughter gets in trouble if she brings her phone to school, but 3 masked guys pulled up at her bus stop, demanding she get in the car. She took off running with no cell phone. She couldn't call me and let me know. She had to wait till she got to school to let me know what was going on.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
that's my concern. So, thank you.
Can we have your contact number?
Yes.
Somebody know you don't have to say it public. You can just give it to the administrator.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Glad your daughter is okay. At this time, I would like to ask Dr. Pamela Pugh to come forth from the Michigan Department of Education to join us on the stage. Is Dr. Pamela Pugh? Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Pugh. For those that don't know, you can introduce yourself and the purpose you're here to uplift the community and give us some input. Proceed.
Absolutely. My name is Pamela Pugh, and I am president of the Michigan Board of Education here for the state of Michigan. And no stranger to the community of Flint. And thank each and every one of you all for having me here. And as you all know, I am here as a colleague. And Dr. Rice from Michigan Department of Education, our superintendent of public instruction, sends his regards. He knew that I was coming here and had an opportunity to talk to him, but just really wanted to come again as a colleague, because we know that we're facing unprecedented times. We are facing a time when our freedoms are being tested like none other. And this is a time where we just really don't have the answers. But we have everything that's being thrown at us by our President of the United States of America. And since being in office just 30 days, today I believe marks 30 days, he's put out an unprecedented 65 executive orders. As we know, the President is only one of 3 branches of government. And unfortunately, he unilaterally is throwing out executive orders that are somewhat confusing. He is calling for, and we heard this during the election cycle, the elimination of the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education. And what the Flint community needs to know, as well as communities across this state and country, that will be devastating. Whether they totally eliminate the department or whether they defund the department. And again, this is a time when they're talking about purchasing Greenland in Canada, but we have to think about our children. Our children, most particularly in communities like Flint, we're just starting to see historical budgets that dig us out of the hole. And we have a long ways to go. But Title I dollars to the tune of $400 million across this state, that means it impacts our urban communities as well as our rural communities. Our special education programming that we know we have a long ways to go. Since its inception, decades ago, IDEA has not been adequately funded, but now we're looking at 10% of our dollars that come from the federal government being removed. And I see you, Superintendent, shaking your head. You're probably looking at these numbers. So we know that that's looking at the elimination of the U.S. Department of Education. Then when many of us were enjoying our Valentine's Day evening, there was this notice that came across from the current U.S. Department of Education stating that they were reiterating and making sure that they were pressing down dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI programs within 14 days, or that these programs would lose their funding. And I know that these are things that you're grappling with, Superintendent, as well as superintendents across this country. The unfortunate thing is that the term has been used so loosely. It has been used to describe people who look like me. It's been described to talk about women. It's been used to describe people who help people that look like the children that you serve. It's been used to describe our LGBTQ community. So there's a lot of confusion that is out there. But what we know is that, number one, an executive order does not supersede the Constitution, state or federal laws. This was a directive that really could infringe upon civil rights laws. We also know that just calling something illegal does not make it illegal, because we have teachers right now, educators, who are thinking that it is illegal or being told that it is illegal to teach about our history. And our AG, Attorney General Nessel, has come out and talked about what is considered illegal and unlawful. Something coming out of the president's mouth or being inked on a piece of paper does not make something a law and unlawful. Just looking at some calls to action. So these things have been thrown out into the air. They're being challenged in court. Many of the challenges our state, through our Attorney General, has signed on to. Superintendent Rice has issued guidance to the field, to Superintendent Jones and his counterparts, as well as hopefully boards have seen that guidance. And again, this guidance pertains to undocumented children, immigrant children. It pertains to indoctrination or curriculum, and there's been a few others that have been addressed through the legal system and through this guidance that has been provided through Michigan Department of Education. What I've been telling people to do is to get in touch with their boards of education, to get in touch with you all, to come and tell you that they support you in standing firm, standing strong, ensuring that you're seeking legal guidance before taking action to what many of these executive orders that have gone through the judicial system so far. There has been restraining orders And so they're held up in the court. So not acting fast, but go to get legal counsel. What I've asked on February 3rd, even before this last love letter came out from the U.S. Department of Education, I asked Attorney General Nessel to provide guidance to districts so that districts aren't inadvertently violating current civil rights laws. So we're hearing of people whose contracts are just being stripped from them. And we have to admit that Superintendent Jones, you'll have counterparts that are loving this moment in history because it's providing them the cover to do something that they've wanted to do. You don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So there is a pause, time to pause. Make sure that you are getting legal guidance before taking action as a result of these executive orders that, again, do not supersede going through Congress. If that's where they should be going, we're a local control state, so curriculum is, you all are the people who decide what curriculum goes in school. So make sure you all know your authority. And so Dr. Rice also put out guidance and a letter and also tagged to that a legal opinion that set precedent as it relates to our immigrant children, that they belong in our classrooms, they have a right to be in our classrooms, and you all can stand on that guidance as well. And so, you know, outside of seeking legal protection and clarification, think about resolutions that you all want to pass that speak as one unified body on how you stand on these issues. Looking at how you're embedding DEI into policies, mobilizing community. This is a time for community to come together like none other. This is a time that we have to set aside the differences and come together and work together, hosting town halls. Because one of the things that I'm really emphasizing as a Black woman who understands that I have to play that role at that table is that this purposeful confusion and what I call the intended, unintended consequences is going to impact the dinner tables, the pocketbooks of Black, brown, LGBTQ communities. We're already seeing monies being withheld. There's a list that's going around that shows like the list of words that you don't want to be affiliated with. Some of us, it's hard for us to unaffiliate ourselves with. You know, number one, if you're working in a community that's predominantly Black and brown people, you're going to be servicing those people. So there is the purposeful confusion with what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. With diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially the inclusivity part, our children who are special education, in special education programming, they're going to get it coming and going. They're going to get it from the defunding of the Department of Education side, again, in places where we've never been adequately funded. They're going to get it from these anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion directives as well. So again, this is a moment to pause, come together as community, and really through good legal counsel before you act. You know, some people think of going to get legal counsel after they've acted. So if that makes sense. So before you take action on these directives, which many feel are unfounded, and the DEI, I've asked Dana Nessel to give guidance, and hopefully she will. We're also asking the governor to speak up on the diversity, equity, and inclusion pieces. So I thank you all for this opportunity and just allowing me to come and share with you.
Thank you, Dr. Peter. I really appreciate your time and effort and the work that Dr. Rice and the team is doing as we move forward. I'm going to talk to my board members right now. Board members, we're going to give you one round of questions because we got a long agenda, and you can ask your question, and she can respond. So you have one question to ask and one round. Trustee Rutherford.
Hi, Dr. Pugh, how are you? Good, how are you?
And let me start by saying, I might just be writing the question down and coming back to you, getting back to you.
Mine is real straightforward. Can we, I haven't seen the guidance from Dr. Rice nor the letter, so could you make that available to us?
Absolutely, and the last guidance to the field, probably, go ahead.
It's in the update that I sent to you all with the links.
Okay, my reason for that is something changes every day.
This is
So
true.
it's, for me, I guess I'm no different than anyone else, but as things change, I think the main thing is the main thing. And I guess for me, which laws are we following at any given time? I would definitely like that to be in it. You know, are we, I know nothing has been changed in Congress. The civics I recall is Congress makes laws.
Exactly.
But I know things have changed, so I just want to be cognizant of what's going on, and I just press upon you and your office to definitely make sure the information gets
Right.
down as soon as possible.
And it's coming fast and furious. Again, I started with saying we are just in uncharted territories. And when I was saying about getting the legal advising, and hopefully, and one of the things that I mentioned to AG Nessel is just being able to respond quickly, which we have been able to respond quicker than some areas. But to the point about seeking legal guidance is act as if you're following the law those laws that have been on the books. Because these executive orders have not gone through Congress. Most of them are in the courts because of that. So laws have not changed.
Thank you. And for the records, the Land and Communications through our superintendent, they are working as top with legal team. As they get the information, Superintendent Jones sends it out to the board. And once everything, these official guidelines and everything get in place, then we will begin to formulate how we're gonna move. But right now, we're moving strictly, directly, as you stated. Superintendent Jones is working with the people at the top, and he passing information down to the board. And hopefully we get it that, I seem to be getting it in a timely manner. Thank you. Next question, Trustee McIntyre.
Good evening, Dr. Pugh. Thank you so much. As usual, here you are. You've been a solid presence, and we really appreciate you coming to an awful lot of our board meetings and showing your support. And that activist background that you have, I appreciate, and I appreciate your calls to action. So I don't necessarily have, as per se, questions to ask you, but more just to thank you for lifting up our focus on resolutions. I believe that we will be following that in the days, if not to come, to make resolutions about where we stand as a unified board, and to call to the community to come together, to come and speak out, to be at the board meetings, and to lift their voices so that we know that we're not alone and that we're unified and together. And to embed DEI into our policies. We've been diligently doing that, but it's more urgent than ever. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate that. I guess my ask to you would be just to, keep it up, to keep up the communication. I've been impressed with what the Attorney General has been doing in terms of leading the way for some states to push back against some of these, illegal moves that have been made by the executive office. And so I guess my ask to you would be to, help us. You have a more direct line of communication with her to help be a conduit with what we need in the Flint School District to Attorney General Nessel and to keep that up. That's all I have for now.
I appreciate that, and I'll be looking to you all too, because you'll hear and you'll see things what's going on the ground. I was on my way to Jackson yesterday, and someone was calling, and they were talking about ICE agents that were in the area. And I will say that I have been disappointed. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is one that we've not seen met with the same urgency and expediency. It will impact, yes, the history that our children are being taught in schools, but think about all the work that's being done that could be misconstrued as diversity, equity, and inclusion, let alone the good work that is being done, that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we're gonna have to call on allies and friends and leaders such as yourself to be firm in those areas. And again, like you said, we go step in step, hand in hand with the legal team. But again, it's no different than any other orders that or directives that we've just referred right back to this. There's no changes in Congress. There's been, the judicial system has not, told us to act otherwise.
Thank you.
Trustee Perkins?
Dr. Pugh, thank you for coming. I'm one of those 50s and 60s ladies. And so, being an activist in the union, we fought many battles like this in the past, and we made great headway. I'm gonna sit still for a minute and take my direction from our leadership. But just know that the word is going out everywhere. We need to make our communities understand what this really means. And oftentimes they don't, especially in the urban areas. They don't understand.
Right.
So we have to do a better job of communicating what this really means to all of us. They don't get it. I've watched a lot of things in the school system. Some of these children, the simplest things, they don't understand. We've got to do a better job of that, and I'm hopeful that we will. But I'm going to take direction from the leadership here, and then we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to be about it. That's where I'm at. Thank you.
Any more questions from the board? Trustee Luna?
Thank you. Thanks, Doctor, for coming here tonight. My comment's really about how we can look to the state to protect our vulnerable student populace. In particular, I'm thinking about the immigrant students who are both documented and undocumented in their schools, so legal citizens and the children of folks who aren't in the most clear status right now. I'll be real, I think of things in dollars and cents oftentimes, and I know the high mark for the K-12 enrollment was in 1970, and we had about 2.1 million students in our K-12 schools, or at about 1.3 million, and that's just due to our aging population, folks like, millennials and younger folks not having as many kids as our parents did. But really, the one bright spot in that entire thing is, you look at places like Dearborn, Detroit, and even here in Flint, the biggest growth that we've seen in our enrollment, even though we've overall lost students, is from immigrant students from all different statuses. So if, in theory, we were to lose these students through deportation or you just not even coming to Michigan, that's a huge financial burden and impact on our district's long run and long term. So that's in the back of my head. I know tomorrow, some of us are going to a forum about immigrant students and just how that looks like for us in this community. So just want to express that thought and concern.
Absolutely. You're spot
Any
on.
more questions? Anyone that has not spoken? Thank you very much, Dr. Pugh. Look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you all, and we are going to stand strong. We are going to stand firm. Yes, we are in unprecedented times, and we need to make sure that people realize that that is going to impact our economy.
Superintendent Jones, I'm sorry. I would have to be here.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Good to see you. My comments is for the stakeholders of Flint Community Schools and those that are in our community that's thinking of being a part of Flint Community Schools. We've been in training for diversity, equity, and inclusion for the last 2 years. Our administrators have been trained. Our teachers are trained. We're continuing to train and we won't stop. The other comment I want to make is that every one of our classrooms have diverse classroom libraries on purpose, because when our Black and brown scholars open the books, they need to be able to see themselves. We're going to continue doing what we're doing. We're going to continue doing what we're doing. And we won't stop, but we will follow the law. And our Board of Education, the day that these executive orders started coming through, every one of our board members were concerned and wanted to make sure that things were happening. We immediately began to get information from our attorneys, and we sent that information not only to our Board of Education, but we sent it to our principals so that they know how to handle if ICE walked in the door. So all of our principals have been given that information, how to handle, who to call, which is your superintendent, and we will be at that door to protect and to do what is right. We will follow the law, but we will protect our scholars. And that's what we've been trained to do, and that's what this board has called for us to do. So we're going to continue to do that. And we thank you, we thank Dr. Rice for being an advocate for Flint. Not just Flint Community Schools, but Flint, period. And we're going to just keep doing that work.
And I have to say, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate that we do have superintendents such as yourself and Dr. Rice at the state. He was off a couple of days, and I talked to him each of those days, and each time I was like, okay, how you feeling? He's like, we're moving forward, we think that we're standing on the side of right, and we're standing on the side of the legal right as well. So, thank you all.
Absolutely. The last thing I would say is I don't want our scholars, our parents, and our teachers to get sidetracked from what we're supposed to be focused on. We're supposed to be focused on the education of children. And we can easily get sidetracked about what's going on the news, what's going on Facebook and all these other places, and then it turns our mind away from educating, inspiring, and motivating children. We're going to make sure that we bring the latest and greatest information forward. That's our job. We want our teachers to continue to teach, our counselors to continue to do great things with our scholars and getting them ready for college. And we want them to know that we're ahead of this with Dr. Rice, with our ISD partners, and others in the community that's concerned about this. The center, we're ahead of this, and we're going to continue to stay ahead of it. And having you come today is a part of being ahead of it. So we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn the floor over to Trustee Booth the introduction of our next presenters.
Good afternoon, especially to the audience. Thank you for coming and staying for this presentation. You will not be disappointed. I would like to ask, they're already coming forth. We have the associates from the Urban Superintendent Collaboration Incorporating Green Education Services to join us on the stage. And please introduce yourself and proceed with your presentation.
President,
I think you should.
excuse me.
One second.
Proceed.
Tracy, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, President Ellis, McGill, Superintendent Jones, and esteemed board. We are super excited to be here. We've had some opportunities to engage with you about the wonderful work that you're doing. And Superintendent Jones, when you just said, like, the focus is on education, sometimes the world gets us away from the focus, and the focus is the students and student outcomes. So I am so happy to hear you always continue to say that wherever I see you at, it's not just about sitting in the boardroom. That is something that you live and breathe every day. And also, President McNeil, when I met you, what you talked about is students. And one of the things that, when we had an opportunity to speak to each one of you, you talked about students. And that is so powerful because I believe when we talk about students' experiences in our system that starts at pre-K, because we're going to talk about graduation. The road to graduation is not their senior year. The road to graduation starts at pre-K, and it is pre-K through 12, and the 12th grade is the summation. Oftentimes, graduation is an expectation for students. You got to get to the point where graduation is a non-negotiable, because they have to exit into the workforce or go on to a high school career or a college, and they need to be ready for that. But that has to be really, really grown from day one. So we're going to talk about a graduation initiative. We're going to talk about data. We're going to talk about some opportunities, how to build it, not just with the board, the superintendent and staff, but the community, the students, and the stakeholders, because everyone should be owning the work around our students when they come to us to graduate. Mr. Green?
Good evening, everyone. I will forego some of the things that I do want to talk about until later, until it's my turn, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys. And I'll go ahead and let Tracy go ahead and get started with the presentation. I think we're almost ready.
So while he is bringing up the PowerPoint, I will start with a little bit about me. I'm no stranger to education. I started out teaching 3rd grade at an at-risk elementary school, and I probably had every job from that 3rd grade to a reading specialist, to a Title I specialist, to an area superintendent, to a deputy superintendent, to a superintendent. So I really understand the nature of the work you do. It is not always easy work for boards and superintendents, and I kind of smiled when I was over there and said, well, do I miss board meetings or not? But what I do miss is when we have an opportunity to change the lives of students. So as he brings up the PowerPoint, just a little bit about me, what I currently do is I work with AASA and Howard University for the Urban Superintendents Collaborative, and we take cohorts of sitting superintendents and future superintendents and train them on the work, board relationships, budget, finance, stakeholders, you name it, whatever it is, right? Whatever is happening in the country right then that's hot. When we heard about the cell phone policy, that's not just here in Flint. You hear that at board meetings across. So we bring thought leaders together who are struggling with this, who has been successful, and we train them on those things to bring them back. And as a result of that, my partner and I opened up the Urban Superintendents Collaborative, where we meet with superintendents across the country as a think tank, and we share ideas, thoughts, we meet up and talk about what's working, but with a focus on student outcomes and what's working in districts for students. Are you bringing these over? Okay, because I can keep talking.
And if you guys feel comfortable, walk around and talk, because I know when you're doing a presentation, you like to do body movement, but if you feel comfortable, you don't have to be glued right there to it.
I appreciate that, President McNeil. I do love to get up and walk around.
Yeah,
but,
I know those
but I think I'll try to stay in my seat today.
I appreciate it. Okay.
Well, while we're still waiting to get the PowerPoint up and ready, I'll go ahead and quickly introduce myself. I'm Wendell Green, the President and CEO of Green Education Services, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me. I think I didn't really get a chance to do this earlier, but I got into education. I got into education basically on accident. I did not want to be an educator. My parents are both educators. My father was actually a minister as well. And I saw the struggles that they went through to be an educator. Thank you. My voice is heavy. I thought y'all could hear me. Okay. So I was saying that both my parents are educators. My mom actually taught SPED, which I take my hat off to all SPED educators, by the way. And my father was an English teacher. And I did not want to teach based on that. But bottom line, when I got into education, I fell in love with it. I saw a need, and I was really good at really helping kids master certain skills. And I wanted to take that not just to the kids I was working with, but to the entire community, especially my community. And so that's when I really got into other things like mathnasium and a few other things that I'll share with you a little bit later. But it looks like we're about ready. Are we ready now?
So Ryan and I are gonna make this
Almost on the
work.
same page.
I think I talked about myself, Ryan, so you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, we can just do that.
So strategic priority one, so as we come to talk to you about the graduation initiative, it really came from your strategic priority one, the scholar focus. The next two slides I'm not going to read to you if you're in the packet we provided you, but it's just the excerpt from your objectives from your strategic plan, and then the next page is your actual action steps of what you wanted to see. Skip, Brian, he's trying to keep up with me. So we talked about the objectives, next one, and we talked about performance indicators. Here's where it gets big. This is all the stuff you know. There's nothing new in here. It came from your strategic plan. The next slide is what I really want to talk about. So when you think of what that means to unwrap, some of the rich dialogue we have was around what graduation rates were, what do they look like for students, are we on track based on your 5%? So I took an opportunity to build some examples of action steps. Part of those action steps is when I had conversations with Dr. Superintendent Jones, and when I had conversations with Mrs. Fields, Kelly, I think she was over there, we were trying to get information about what are the things that are actually working and everyone's excited about, and where are areas that we could actually improve. So when you look at this first page, there's the performance indicator that you have outlined as a 5%. Then I jotted down some action steps, like how do we get there, right? Like how do we get there? And then measurement of that evaluation, how do we know we're doing well and what does that look like for students? And could the board and the superintendent articulate that in such a way that board members understood that and that the public understood the work that you were doing for students? If you take a moment and you look at page 12 in your packet, so page 12 is under the strategic priorities. So you go to strategic priorities. The reason why I'm doing this is because there would be 100 slides if we put all of this in. So I put an example of one up so you could see how we broke down the particular action steps and measurements. But we actually went through every performance indicator under that objective that you have for your strategic plan and talked about specifically what could measurement and evaluation look like to know if you're actually hitting the target goal that you set forth for the district. Working with Superintendent Jones and his team, we can figure out those things where the board feels like, we're not too sure about that, or, oh yes, we know we are hitting the target. For instance, are you making your annual goals of a 5% graduation rate every year based on your priority? And if you are, great, but when we take a deeper dive, maybe Black males aren't growing at 5%, and then what do we need to do and look at that differently? One of the things that somebody in the audience brought out, talked about attendance, engagement, and those pieces. If you take an opportunity to look under page 4, which just wasn't in the presentation, but she had brought it up. So if you look under data collection, and you look under page 4, you'll see some of the ideas that we propose for data collection is, of course, disaggregating, which means separating out graduation rates by ethnicity, by special needs, by SES, and see if they're growing, but we also looked at attendance and engagement. What's happening? Dropout rates happen because kids don't go to school, they get behind, and they drop out. But what we do know is when kids come to school their freshman year, they're actually on track to graduate. Something happens between the 9th grade and the 12th grade where they drop out. And what we want to do is really take a deep, deep dive into that data, work with Superintendent Jones and team and figure out like what is going on. So when I talk about a graduation initiative, I'm just telling you a snapshot of what that could look like. For us to get a deep, deep understanding, we got to be in the district, we got to understand the culture, we understand the climate, what has worked, what has not worked. How do kids feel about graduation? How do parents feel about graduation? In fact, do parents even know what it takes to graduate per state law? Do kids understand what it takes to graduate per state law? So we're going to look at a few of these pieces, and then I'm going to share some examples that I've shared with members of the board, and you all felt that the whole board should see some of these examples. And if we move forward, talk about how do we build a graduation initiative for Flint first. Graduation should be, our schools in Flint should be their first choice. And as I know you are planning on building an amazing school that I can't wait to see, but the school being built is just the shell. It is the building. What happens in the building matters for students also. And how do we bring that all full force together as a team collaborating so that everyone understands the purpose that when kids walk through the doors, we really want 100% graduation rate for every kid. Every kid. Now, some of those kids might be on alternative assessments, right? But families and the board and the superintendent, we should all believe that every kid who walks in the door has an opportunity. Next slide. So the road to graduation. I put this up so it's not like this is my first rodeo. I actually know how to build a graduation agenda and I've done it, but when you see those kids, so those kids were in kindergarten when they took those pictures. And when we talk about building a system in which it's embedded for graduation, we have to start with our babies too, right? Like the graduation and the handoff, the matriculation starts pre-KK, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, until they matriculate to the 12th. But we shouldn't hear about graduation as soon as they get to high school. We should be talking about graduation as early as when they come in because they should have something to aspire to and understand the why in the learning. And for teachers also, and the staff to understand the why, but also to understand the challenges. So when you look through the data book, I'm gonna talk about what are challenges, what hinders kids from coming to school. And that doesn't happen in high school. We know that kids drop out as early as 7th grade, or kids miss a lot of days of school in elementary. So then the handoff isn't always smooth. So we're gonna kind of go through this road to graduation and talk about what it could look like, but actually it would be built with the staff, the board, the community, and the students so that it would permeate the system from pre-K to 12. Next slide, please. I'm big on student voice. We can talk all we want about a graduation initiative, but I do believe that we should also make sure that students are having a voice in their learning. I always laugh as a superintendent. I would say something to the kids was like, "You so old, Miss Davis. We don't do that no more. Nobody, you're only old people are on Facebook." Okay, so I got to get an Instagram and a TikTok, right? But what are the kids doing too? And I think kids have an amazing opportunity to share how they feel about school, and they have advocacy and agency in their road to graduation and what that could look like. Can you click on strengthen voices for me? I think that's a hot link if you loaded it, and if not, we'll see. And he's gonna stop the commercial, but I wanna give you a snapshot of what it could be. How do we bring kids into this work and families? You got some sound?
By other student voice projects from around the district, and by the end of the day, we hope that they feel ready and excited to take on big, meaty educational issues at their own school site.
The Strengthen Voices Conference is meant to inspire students to use their voice and create change not only in the classrooms but throughout the district. Our generation has the ability to change our world and empower what goes on in our schools.
Well, at the beginning I was very nervous. I've never spoken in front of more than people before, but I quickly learned that I just have to be myself on stage, and it went really, really well. And like, it's nice to have people listen to you and like hear what you have to say.
I thought it'd be a good opportunity to learn stuff about myself and like help other younger students with like maybe some problems that they're dealing with.
Okay, we're not gonna watch the whole thing if that's enough. But what I wanted you to see is how students are talking about how they feel about school, and what you don't see in there is that the board members, the superintendent, chiefs, like all the employees, we invited parents, like come listen to what the kids are saying, right? So while we're making decisions about their lives, because all of you will be making decisions about their lives, what are they saying? And do they have an opportunity to have agency and choice when they talk about these things? Now, I can tell you know, kids will say, why can't we eat McDonald's and what, like, that's not gonna happen because we got federal guidelines, right? But when they say something like, well, why can't we walk out if they're doing it across the country? And why do we have to be kicked out of school if we do? So I look at the policy, I said, so you have 11 minutes to get back in class, let's make a deal, right? Like, and so they walk out peacefully, they walk back in, and they have voice and choice, and they believe that the adults listen to what they had to say. Now that takes a little practice, right? Kids have to trust you to make sure that can happen. But those are the kind of things that as you build a graduation initiative, we want the kids to have a voice in this piece too. Next slide. So what does that look like? Well, the first simple thing is, I shared a sheet with the entire board is, do kids know what they need to graduate in families? And one of the things we did as a system, and I was talking to Superintendent Jones, how could we build a system where they knew they were on track? When you wait till their senior year and they're behind 15 credits, you're probably not gonna get them to pass. But if we were on top and being reactive in the 9th grade, all the freshmen this year who's missing classes, how can we get those credits made up beforehand so we're not waiting forever to get that? And this sheet would be used, or whatever counselor, so this is part of the work we don't know. Like, we have to sit with counselors, how do we do this better? Does this work for you? What doesn't work for you? What would you like to see? But it actually keeps you on track if the kid's graduating. So if you say you want to have a 5% increase, we should be talking about how many freshmen are on track to graduate now, how many sophomores are on track to graduate, and if they're not on track, what do we do to get them on track as part of a larger initiative? And that might be remediation. I know we talked about credit recovery with Ms. Kelly. She talked about some pieces. What is working? Do kids like credit recovery? Is it Saturday school? But what are all the things we can do differently and be innovative to ensure that the kids who are not on track get on track so by the time they get to their senior year, we don't have those issues. And why I put 2 sheets up there, because I want to share the first sheet, the Dorothy Day sheet was the first version of the sheet. And that sheet was really only about graduating at the basic requirements. And as we had parent meetings, parents were like, my kids want to go to college too, so what are the requirements if they want to get into college? What are the requirements if they want to get into local college? And is there any opportunities where there's scholarships, right? So we work with our universities, which I know that Michigan has a lot of this. If you meet this requirement, you actually can go to school for free. For a kid who doesn't know that, they might not meet the expectation, but if they know that there's something at the end, they might work differently. And how do we do that on a continuous basis? Because we know they hear about it. I know the councils are sharing this information, but sometimes it doesn't land, and it doesn't land with our parents. I think earlier we talked about the community that, like, we're here, but we don't know, Trustee Perkins, and how do we get the community to know this could be afforded to your kid? I share with people all the time, my parents did not graduate from college, high school. I actually did not know kids didn't graduate from high school. I didn't know that was a thing, because it was a non-negotiable in my house. Even though my parents didn't graduate, it was a non-negotiable. And so sometimes it's not just the parents, but like sometimes it's the school system who have to step in and tell kids they can do it. Next slide. We talk about the work of the board, we talk about the work of schools and the superintendent, but family engagement is so important. So as we work to look at these pieces, working with the superintendent's team, how can we beef up family engagement so that we understand that the road to graduation is not their senior year? Why it's important that kindergartners come to school every day, right? Why is it important for 3rd graders to be at school every day as most of they can, right? Looking at those pieces, I bet you if you look at a dropout and you look at their career, they probably had risk indices way before they got to high school. And how do we attack those risk indices to ensure that they are successful? I put this slide in here because I am a believer, next slide, that the master is no greater than the servant. So I did not ask teachers to do home visits if the superintendent wasn't doing home visits. So I would do home visits with teachers, and there's a little shock factor in there, Superintendent Jones, when you show up. But it also says how important it is. And it's also important that board members actually did home visits too, to understand what was happening in the community. Now, I will tell you, this is a monumental task, right? But you start somewhere and then you grow it, because it shows how committed you are and how you want kids to graduate. We talked about the potential opportunity of doing a back to school, you're not on track to graduate, knocking on doors, showing up, we love you, what can we do to help you get to that point? What do you need? We are invested in you 100%. So as we look at the students, you can say, you good, yeah, no, good, right into where I'm leading to. Part of the other thing that we did was we sent letters every year to freshmen. Welcome to you, high school. We want you to graduate. This is what we have for you. And then as we evolved, we sent letters to kindergartners, their families. This is what we need you to do. In those freshman letters, we actually sent a magnet. And in the magnet, it was their ticket to graduation, to welcome their freshman year. You already have a ticket. You just got to make sure you work to get into graduation. But moreover, there was a QAR on that graduation, as you can see on the picture, the little black QAR. And if you took a picture on that QAR, next slide, it would take families to a landing page that was specifically dedicated to graduation requirements, anything they needed to know about getting their kids to the finish line. Oftentimes in systems, the rules change. They change what the curriculum is, how many credits sometimes. So as that changed, parents would be able to look and see what that was when they clicked onto the link. So that magnet that you saw actually was an information agent for parents, because as a superintendent, I couldn't even register my kid because our webpage is so wonky. We think it's easy and clean, but sometimes that's not for our families. So how do we make it simple for families? Part of that work we did, and I shared with Dr. Jones, is building the support of telling your story. You guys are gonna do amazing work and continue to do amazing work, but if nobody knows about that amazing work, but the few folks in the audience and the people watching, how will you not know the good work that's happening for students? So we built out a countdown to graduation to share with families. Next slide. And of course, we use Facebook, but it was on Instagram and TikTok too. And I just want to show you an example of what a kid had to say about the road to graduation. Next slide. It should be a hot link if you click on the phone. This is the center of the phone. I hope it works. That's my man. He tells a good story. Go back, click in the middle of the phone. Oh, there it is. I think it popped up for you.
I ride 4 buses every single day. I've been doing that for the last 4 years. It was raining, it was snowing. I still came to school, That's my resilience. It's don't let anything, weather, Mother Nature, people, don't let anything, weather, Mother Nature, people, homework, don't let that push you down, because there's always a tomorrow, always gonna be a tomorrow.
When he walked through our building doors 4 years ago with his grandma, we made a promise to her and to him to take care of him through the end, which was easy because he is such an amazing joy. This young man will walk into a room and make it glow. It does not matter, like he said, what the situation, he is always smiling.
The reason why I chose Christina LaFood, I don't want to use any profanity, but she is one heck of a counselor, okay? When I'm climbing up a hill, when I start to stumble and fall, my legs get tired, she's right there. Boom, come on, let's go. We gotta get up this hill right quick.
It's really the bond with him too. It doesn't even take a word sometimes. I just look at him and say, Tyree, and he's like, I know, Mrs. LaFood.
My teacher, Mrs. Nelson, I have to give her a big shout out. She pushed me, Tyree, you got this, you got this, you got this. So that's why my favorite subject right now is government. My main thing I want to do is I want to help people, because I'm a really good socializer, and I just like socializing with people. I like talking, I'm enthusiastic about things. I come up to people how are you? I just love helping people, especially kids, because that's our future, I love kids. I have a nephew and a niece right now. I'm an uncle, so I love kids. my grandma's my biggest supporter. Like that's, you know, it's my grandmother, maybe Mrs. Little number two. I'm doing it for myself, but I need to do it for my grandma. Like she's been there, you know, she raised me like a, you know, right way. She like molded me. She molded me into the man I am today. So it's like I gotta appreciate her. I gotta do everything I can. That's like my primary priority is my grandma.
So much of it fell onto him, those 4 buses a day and the family trials and tribulations that they have been through. To see him stick it out and get to where he is today just makes us so proud to call him a Panther and have him as part of our family.
Thank you. See, the superintendent never had to go out and tell the story because we could capture the story with the students. And not only the students, celebrated the adults, the teachers and counselors who are working on those buildings every day. And I know high school can be tough, but I'll tell you something. It was amazing to meet his teachers when they talked about how they love kids and what they wanted to do and help. And we have amazing teachers right here in Flint that you might not even know is shaking hands and getting kids to where they need to be. I mean, I don't know about you, but and it was cold in Reno, so we had snow. So 4 buses to get to school, I didn't even know that was happening. And he wasn't going to school because he didn't have money to get on the bus, right? But whatever challenges our kids face, it is our job to ensure that we take out those challenges and give them the best opportunity. When we started this graduation rate initiative push, the left-hand side, because graduation numbers are, you get an overall number, but the left-hand side says subgroup. So it's the Black students, students with disabilities, right? And you see the 63-point difference. But when we finished, when I left in 2019, the difference was only 31%. Because what you really want to get to is 1 dot. Really, that's the goal, close the gap. The achievement gap might be how students produce, but when we think about the students, every adult in the system owns the opportunity gap. What opportunities are we not affording kids because of policy, because of things that we do, or actually takes away from them being successful? Next slide. So when I left in 2019, it was a great lead, but to have an 86% graduation rate from 63% probably is the highlight of my life. Because when you think about taking over a district where only 6 out of 10 kids graduate, and then you get to 8 out of 10 kids graduating. That means no matter who you are, when you walk through these doors, whether you have an IEP, whether you are Black, whether you are second language, whether you chubby like me, tall like him, you have an opportunity to get a diploma. And we see you as you come through those doors, and we understand our families, and how do we do that work together? And I know you are doing some monumental work already, but how do we strengthen that so that every kid in this system has an opportunity and knows that they will get to the finish line and onward to college if they want to go? How do we bring families in the fold? How do we bring stakeholders in the fold? Because I can tell you, I mentored a kid as a superintendent, and it made the difference in that kid's life. But I also had community leaders helping out, saying, hey, I checked on Johnny because we had risk in this season. Johnny didn't come to school, maybe because Johnny didn't have food that night, or whatever it is. Because it's hard to get to every kid. But we had a graduating class of 5,600 kids. So I think we did all right to raise the numbers. But that's just one example. How do we build it together where it's meaningful for Flint also, but you also see data and progress monitoring on the way. So now I'm gonna hand it over to Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Tracy. So I think I've kind of already introduced myself. I'll go to the next slide, please. And the only thing I want to highlight on the next slide here is that I was an elementary and science teacher, although it's not what I wanted to teach, that's what I was chosen for. And I was very proud at the end of my service to actually have a 90% math proficiency across the board. That was one of the things that I walked away from with a big smile. I've already talked about some of those other points that with Mathnasium and the firm starting. So I also have a leadership team and my senior leaders are actually on this slide, on the next slide. You will see Jessica Quinn, my chief of staff, was a former, other way. Yeah. Jessica Quinn, who's my chief of staff, some of you met her last time we were here. She's a former curriculum director and former principal. And then I have Dr. Frederick Murray, who's my senior vice president of operations, and he served many roles in actually Jackson Public Schools being one of the largest school districts in the state of Mississippi, the largest urban one for sure. And he served everything from principal to superintendent in that building. Next slide. So about the company, We were founded in 2008, and we're based out of Madison, Mississippi. And over that time, we've served over 60 school districts, including the State Department of Education. We currently have around 80 consultants on the team working both part-time and full-time with an advisory board consisting of superintendents, principals, and educators. And we've been currently serving 19 schools, districts, in 3 different states, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. And again, we are based out of Mississippi, so the majority of them are there. We also can say that we have grown from me just be working as a math and science consultant to now a full service consulting company, providing services throughout all levels in education, but with primary focus being on job embedded professional learning, specifically in underserved communities. We specialize in helping school districts and their teachers and their schools rather reach all their goals, and we emphasize that partnership piece. We discussed that last time I was here, but what I want to talk about before you go to the next slide, well, you're already there. That's okay, go ahead to it. So when you think of Mississippi, when you hear the word Mississippi, what do you all think of? What picture comes to your mind? What idea comes to your mind? I see you like country, absolutely, it's okay. Well, anybody else? I can tell you some of the things I've heard: catfish, blues. Somebody said Elvis. But country is being the first thing. When I first went to the military, that's the image that most of the people that I met, when I say Mississippi, you sit on the front porch with a toothpick in your mouth, playing a banjo, whatever, that kind of thing, right? But that's not all that's in Mississippi. And I don't know if you all have you heard of the Mississippi Miracle? The Mississippi Miracle, yes, in education. So what that boils down to, that's been a national concept that's been out there now for the past few years. And the miracle is, of course, Mississippi started at the bottom. And back in 2013, you can see what our scores were. In 2014, we actually had a new superintendent to come in, Dr. Wright. And Dr. Wright made a lot of changes immediately. One of the focuses she wanted to do was to focus on reading and, of course, math scores, but primarily reading, because reading is the foundation for most of it, right? So you can see the progression there from the time she came in office in 2014 to what we actually put up 22's data and 24's data as well. And you can see when you start from the bottom, it forces you to actually take some really hard look on what you really have been doing over these years and finding some solutions. And that's what we did in Mississippi. We actually came up, it wasn't just really a miracle. It took a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of planning, and sticking to the plan and actually altering the plan as needed according to what the data shows. And that's what we do as a company. Go to the next slide, please. The Green Way is something that I developed maybe about 15 years ago. And the gist of it is we start with this concept of job embedded professional learning, which is not what I was taught to do as a consultant. I was taught initially to go into the room and just basically sit in the back, take notes, and come back out and have a discussion with the principal or the administrators about what I saw. Then we can do some workshops, idea type stuff, and that's not what we do anymore. We come in and we actually work with teachers, work with students to make sure they understand, not just give them theory, but show them the work that we do. So that's what that phrase, when you see job embedded, that's what that really means for us. We also have a data analytic coaching piece that ties into everything that we do. So all of our consultants have a data piece that ties to the students that they're working with and with the teachers. We have those growth-based interventions, and those are basically set up to make sure every kid has a plan, every teacher has a plan to increase their overall scores that affect the accountability model. And last but not least, we really have true dialogue with each other, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. You know, what is our plans? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And how can we best improve? And I'd like to quickly share with you some data pieces on what we do. Now, the first one is basically some school districts that we provide services in. And what I did was just put a clip of just the 22 and 23 scores. But in these 3 districts in particular, we work with those districts anywhere between 5 to 8 years. And all of them, when we first started, there was an F. And they're currently C's and B's. I think they're, as of 24, one school district was a C, the other two were still Bs. Next slide, please. Again, the same type of snapshot, but this breaks down elementary and middle schools in some districts. And you see where we provide services across the board, being ELA, science, math, and even data. Next slide. And in high schools, we, of course, increase that to provide services to U.S. history, leadership, and other subject areas that they need, especially data. So if you take a look at what we've done over the years, we really move needles. And that's what our job is, to come in here and help you increase whatever goals that you have, making sure that we're hitting those points across the board. So how can we help? We can help by implementing those that tailored coaching that focus on teachers, and then tutorial solutions for each student that you're working with, that we're working with. We focus on those KPIs where we're meeting those goals that are set for you guys. We actually have unbiased data reports, improved data systems where we have improved the culture of discussing data. We focus on trying to reduce those teacher burnouts and improve teacher retention. And we also try to focus on those solutions to help relationships across the board with our stakeholders. What you can expect from Green. Number one is a true partnership. We want to make sure that you know that we are a part of this team. You will see a sense of urgency with us that will reflect the common goals and values that we have. You'll also see a commitment for connecting to the community and staff. Last but not least, you will see, that's right here. Last but not least, we've been doing this again for over 17 years, and we are confident we can help with this initiative of Flint First. We believe in you, and we want to be a part of this team. So I'll turn this back over to Tracy to give more in the details about Flint First.
Well, now it's time for the pop quiz for the board. So you have a 5% graduation rate. I just want you to think about, if you hit your 5% next year in 2025, what would your graduation rate be? I'm not going to take papers and grade them, just asking you the question. If you hit your benchmark, what would the graduation rate be? Because that's in your strategic plan. That is the guide that guides you through this work, right? And so what we talk about in building a graduation initiative plan is looking at your strategic plan. And as you can see, I did a little work and pulling some of this out as I talked to Kelly when I was here and talked to Dr. Jones, how could we improve upon the data collection? It would be impossible for anybody to come up here and say, we can do X, Y, and Z, and don't say, we need to do some pre-work, right? Like maybe you are hitting your goals, but maybe it's special education where we're struggling, or maybe it's students with EL, right? We need to understand what you understand and what the superintendent says. You know what? This is going really well for us, but you know what? We need to do a graduation initiative, and we need to be out in the community, and we need to send papers to kids. Like it has to be a plan built off of, like, what is the need, and understanding the data as it applies to your strategic plan. Because you should be going through that strategic plan and progress monitoring, and is this working, is that not working, and how you make decisions, especially at a time where we talked earlier about budget cuts and maybe money won't look the same. Where are you putting your money as it comes to outcomes of academics? Boards have tough jobs because you got to talk about all kind of stuff that's unrelated to students. But the most important job is the job that is related to the academic success of students, right? And we should be thoughtful about how we do that in a deliberate and intentional manner. So when you look at this, I'm not reading this word to word, that's just an overall objective of the plan, what it looks like. Can you go to the next slide? We talked about graduation is not a senior initiative. Sometimes when you say graduation initiative, people go straight to high school. But we do need an entry point. There's no way to attack everything at once. We need to build a thoughtful plan where we can see gains and help students. So as you look at the graduation initiative plan, there has to be some data collection. Turn to the next slide. We kind of looked at some ideas, but we would have to work with Superintendent Jones and his team to determine, are these the correct areas as it aligns to the board's initiatives? Are there other areas where we take this out? But these are some of the things that we looked at for us. But in order to get a clear shot of what those items would be, we would have to spend some time in the system and understand the data. Do you understand what the 4-year cohort is for graduation versus a 5-year cohort? Because that happens. You have a 4-year cohort rate, sometimes you have a 5-year cohort rate. Next slide. So we built a plan on some stages, stage 1, 2, and 3. And what will we do? And so part of stage 1 is actually coming in, engaging the district, talking to the board, what is it you feel you need, talking to Superintendent Jones, and what do you think, and how do we work collaborative together? This work cannot be done successfully with us all not being a team, but a single locus. And the idea is like bring students back to Flint, and why do kids want to come back to Flint, right? Because you have this, you're gonna have a nice building coming up, right? And you're gonna have high graduation rates, but how do you tell your story? Is that story actually out there? Because it's one thing for you to tell your story, it's a different thing when a mama's talking to another mom in the store and say, oh no, this is what happened to my kid, and they did this, this, and this, and then it becomes that much more powerful. So how do we build those pieces out? As you look at stage 2, you'll see we talk about focus group with stakeholders, students, parents, district staff, collecting information. We talk to Superintendent Jones, what is it you want to hear? Like, what questions might you want to hear from the kids? What would you want to know? And build that information together as a team. And then we analyze school climate engagement and SEL needs, and then review resource allocations. Are they in alignment? Is that what you were thinking? Sometimes you're a new board member and there's so much information that comes at you from the system, like, whoa, right? Sometimes you've been on the board for a while, or sometimes you just watch the board and you know what to do. But how do we bring that all together so when you come together to monitor your strategic plan with those initiatives that it is aligned and you see, yes, we are making growth toward this, or maybe we need to tweak this, or maybe that didn't make sense when we wrote it and maybe we need to do an addendum, but you don't know unless you have some data to measure the progress. So we looked at how do we come in and collect the data, synthesize it, look at trend gaps. I've started to look at some gaps. I mean, they're pretty much what you probably already know, like sometimes males don't score as high as females. And if you really look deep, we looked at secondary, but we also went back and looked at some of the scores in elementary and trended them out over time. And what does that mean? Because when you talk about a graduation initiative, not just about seniors, like how are kids doing in the 8th grade? How are kids doing in the 11th grade on the test? And all those high-stake tests that they take. And how do you talk to Superintendent Jones, and Superintendent Jones shares with you the work that he's doing to continue to move that needle up, so it's not a secret for the board or the superintendent or the community. We are all in it together. Next slide. Okay, so when we were having a conversation, right, that's the end of the presentation with Mr. Green. When we were having this conversation, I was sharing with Superintendent Jones and the board president, part of what we do at the Urban Academy is connect folks to other folks doing good work. Open Up Resources is a nonprofit, and they are coming out with Humanizing Mathematics National Pilot Framework. They will be piloting this framework in 50 schools across the country to see how it works. It is really driven in this work when we talk about DEI and cultural competencies. That math work is deeply embedded, so kids see themselves doing math. So if you look at some of your scores, I was like looking at scores and say maybe this might be a great opportunity for them. Regardless of if we are approved or not, this is on the table for you. If you want an opportunity to have one of your lower performing schools in elementary be a part of this pilot for free, they would get all the materials and they would get professional development at zero cost to see like, can we see a difference? This math, next slide, is actually built by my very good friend, Dr. Christopher, he went the other way, Dr. Christopher Childs. Dr. Christopher Childs has taught math at the college level, at the collegiate level, and he is a visionary around this work. And I told him, if they decide to pilot, we're gonna bring you in here, Chris, to talk to them for free, you come in for free, to talk to them about the work, because what he knows as a Black male, his struggles from learning math, and where math didn't make sense to him until he met a teacher that looked like him, and he said, then it all started to click in. So how does that work? So here's just a free opportunity, next slide, please, for you all to decide, specifically for you, Superintendent Jones, if there's a school that you want to look at it, you have the webpage. You do not have to, but it's an opportunity that you have if you want to let a school pilot it for free and have a deeper dive, and happy to have him speak to a school that's interested, that you might be interested in, and what that would look like. Now, time for questions.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here tonight. I just been taking notes, so bear with me as I go through them, but I'm thinking about our stakeholders, so our kids, our staff, our leadership, our colleagues on the board, the Flint taxpayers, And then I think about what's in the presentation, and I think about our partners at the Flint Center for Educational Excellence, at Michigan State Universities, our partnership with the State Department of Education, and also our partnership with the CS Mott Foundation. And I think you guys, you're consultants, you are vendors. I want to make sure that any decision that I make is a good use of our taxpayer dollars, or in other systems also dollars from our partners who give us money to support programs like these. So I want to know what's not already done or duplicative with our partners at the CS Mott Foundation, or at the Flint Center for Educational Excellence, or MSU, or at the state level. And how would you distinguish yourself from them? And then my second question is, what's been your experience working with urban districts like Flint in aging states where we have less than 3,000 students when the majority of the population is Black?
So I'll start with the first one.
Okay.
We don't know everything that they do, the other organizations, but part of the discussions that we've had was about it should not duplicate efforts, right? Because that is a waste of money. So I used to sit up there just like you. I would never put my board in a place where, as they have to approve boards, that they would have to say, well, we thought it was better. What we tried to look for is where would a good entry point be? And based on a lot of the data we know from members of the staff talked about that there's strong work in the elementary levels, but they feel like that as they go to middle school and secondary school, some of that times to weakens. This is just from what we had in a meeting as a group together. So we would not want to duplicate efforts. Actually, that's why we talked about we got to come in and pull the data. We should be working together and looking at the gaps so that we ensure we close those gaps. But that can't be done until we get into a deep dive and work with the superintendent to do it.
Okay. And then the second question was, what's an example of a similar district we've done work in improvements, but specifically an urban district where the state's aging, where they've been, mostly Black students and a declining enrollment?
Well, for me, this is kind of a unique situation. I have worked in urban districts before, but nothing that matches exactly what's happening here in Flint. But the results are there. I mean, we worked in Jackson Public Schools for 4 years, and during that time, every school that we worked in went up from whatever level they were in. Most of them were F, and we focused on elementary and middle schools at that time. And you saw tremendous growth there. Now, we're no longer in that district because things happen, but bottom line, we had high success there. And I moved actually into that area just to make sure I was a part of that team across the board. So I can't really speak exactly to answer that question, but we have experience, I know I have, as far as the work that we've done. And I'm sure that Tracy has some very similar experience too.
So I'm going to speak to my work particularly. I think some of the challenges in large urban districts are some of the same challenges in small districts, especially when it comes to African American students finishing the finish line. If I think about the work in 3 districts that I've been at, we've had challenges when you look at the disaggregated number of closing the gap for students with disabilities and students who ELL and African American or minority students specifically. And you have to do the work a little differently culturally. Some people will say, oh, it should all work for everybody, but it doesn't, right? Like, it is very different when I'm having a conversation with a family who believes that teachers don't like their kids or think that the teachers come with something already against their kids. So you have to have deep conversations and understand the work around, like, how kids feel. So that's why I led with student voice. Do we have an issue with how kids feel about how people feel about them in the system first, or vice versa? And then we created a plan that looked very different. I mean, we had a plan that attacked African American males and Hispanic males straight out. And were families upset? Yep. But their graduation rate was 50% less than everybody else's. So you got to do something different. That difference, I think, looks different for every community. What works in one community won't work in the other community, but you don't know that until you pull the data and have a good understanding. Maybe we do this work, and Dr. Jones said this part of it is great. Thank you very much for this data. This data, we already got that, right? So how can we work through that and build a longer-term plan? But until we truly get involved with the community and get some assets and learn what's working and talk to Dr. Jones, and I know Kelly and I have had some conversations about her love language and what works we wouldn't be able to give you a definitive answer of what would be different, but we give you a definitive answer of what we could do based on what we've heard from the board members already and what challenges we see in the data, and also how you progress monitor your data, whether you use us or anyone else, right? It's important, I feel like as a board member and a superintendent, if you're saying a 5% graduation rate and nobody here can write down that answer, or maybe you did, great, but if you didn't, like, you should know where the system is moving toward, right? And how do we do that together? And if that can be done and there's a way to structure that, maybe that's all that's needed, right? Like, so we're not saying everything, but we don't know everything until we really get in and look at that data and see what the needs. And frankly, Superintendent Jones and I talked about, like, here's where he sees a real weakness, here's where he sees a real strength. We do not want to duplicate efforts because you, for sure, are the fiduciary responsibility of the board to take care of the money.
Right, and I get it. Like, I mean, like, I work in business. I know words like innovation, data-driven, opportunity. But I'm just looking at this contract. It's over 3 to 6 figures, and I'm thinking in my head, if we're already doing this work, then what would be done differently than the current work being done? Because there are gaps, right? We don't have a 100% graduation rate. Our students had 100% reading and math. If they were, we wouldn't have you here in front of us. But I just worry about, okay, if we're already doing this, then what are we doing wrong and what do we do different? And how do we justify that when this 3 period's over for to approve it? And if there were gaps that were being filled, or there were gaps that you guys didn't need to come in, would this price adjust? Because it's not, it's not inexpensive, but I can see why it would be at that level. So that's where my head's at. I would ask Mr. Jones, if he could, through the president, I would encourage you to really engage your leadership and your school staff and our partners in this before you can approve it, to know what your recommendation is, but that's my suggestion. I'm not sure who they've spoken to within our ecosystem, what's being done now, what's not being done, but they couldn't list what wasn't duplicative, and that is a concern.
So I'm not under the understanding that this is a action item.
No. It's just information presentation. I'm just saying that's where my head's at.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee.
Okay, thank you for coming. It's a lot of information, it's a lot of data. I'm really encouraged by what I see initially, and I think, like I said, I'm still processing, but I want to address some of the things that Trustee Luna said, because I'm coming at this from a very different angle. For me, this whole concern about duplicating efforts and the fact that you can't answer that or something, that's not the right question. Like, that's not your responsibility in a way. We have partners that, since I've been on the board, I have been admonishing and calling out for not being colonial overseers and being true partners to the district. What we have, I see, is a land grab and a grant grab and a nonprofit industrial complex that is taking advantage of our district because we have a lot of grant and title dollars. We're a district that isn't comparable to another district. We're a unicorn for a variety of reasons, being that we are the original community school model. And I think I've mentioned this before, that community school model goes back to 1926, where it was originated by the Mott Foundation and Frank Manley, and it was predicated on segregation. So there's a lot that's right with the community school model, but there's a lot that's wrong with it. And we have MSU, the Center for Educational Excellence, used to be the Youth Quest, the CRIM Foundation. It's CRIM 2.0. I find that insulting. We criticized our so-called partners with the CRIM Foundation. We had a lot of criticisms about how they treated our culture and our climate and how the actual students and staff were interacting with the Crim Foundation. Now, on paper, it looked great, right? They got the grant money, they got the grants, but in action, it didn't necessarily always translate. And so the Crim Foundation Youth Quest went away and it got replaced with the Center for Educational Excellence. Mott Foundation, like I said, MSU, it's not whether you're going to be duplicating these services, it's whether these services right now that are being provided by these so-called partners are actually the right service, the right things that we need. And what you're suggesting, what you're offering, wouldn't necessarily be duplicating the services, but I'm going to say it out loud, and it's not going to be very popular in some circles. It might be replacing some of these services. And in my opinion, and I'm just a single board member, it's time some of these things got replaced, and I've been calling for this since even before I've been on the board. Some of these things are not working. We've gotten too complacent. Some of these institutions, some of these nonprofit corporations have gotten too comfortable with the grant trough that's been churning out money and salaries and programs for decades. Now, that may be a moot point in the future because we may not even have money. We may not even have a Department of Education title dollars or grant dollars. But right now, what I want to see from the board is to investigate and to look into what it is that we need, whether these so-called partners are providing any of that, and whether we want you to provide it in addition to some of the unique things that you have to offer. Like maybe you can be doing it better, right? Because I'm looking at some of these things and I'm really encouraged by your success rates, your results, about how you're going at it, because some of this way that you're approaching data is frankly a lot more, I'm a sociologist. I teach data, I teach research methods. In my view, I'm getting some of the answers that I've been asking for a long time that haven't had any answers. I mean, the questions I've been asking that haven't had. Like, why is this happening?
Got her mic.
Like, why do we have a SIG grant, for example, a 5-year SIG grant, and all of our programs get cut when we have a SIG grant? We have a school improvement grant, and I know I'm beating a dead horse. Like, how many times have I said this? You've all heard me say this before. But under the SIG grant, we got rid of dual enrollment, AP classes, our IB program, and all of the special, improvement things that grant was supposed to bolster. So I want answers, and the answers I've gotten haven't been forthcoming, or they've just been inadequate. And so what I want is to have us do a deep dive and look at this. Now, I'm not saying we take any action necessarily now, but we need to have a bigger conversation, because it's not, for me, it's not taken for granted that MSU, the Center for Educational Excellence, the Mott Foundation are going to continue to do what they've been doing, because it hasn't worked. So that's where I'm at right now. I still have questions. I still have to process this, so thank you.
Trustee Rutherford.
Thank you. Thank you all for your presentation. For me, you guys are a breath of fresh air. I've been one to ask for data. I would love to go back as far as 2017 up to current, and I think the data will speak for itself. And with you all stating, I think I read somewhere that you stand behind your work, and if we're not satisfied, you're willing to give back some of the money.
Yes, ma'am. That was the next thing I was going to
That
address.
speaks volumes.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I don't think any partner has ever said that.
Yes, ma'am.
What was important to me was the data. I read it. It's a lot of information, but my conversation with your chief of staff at the dinner, that sold it for me, because her approach was as if a white canvas. You all approach districts where they are. Not where you think they are or where they should be, but where they are and based on where the state wants them to be. For me, you put it in writing, you show it, you can explain it, and looking at you all's credentials, your credentials kind of mirror what you're saying, and I believe you all care. And when you care about something, it's not about the dollar. It's about the results. And with the direction that the district is going, you all are what we need. Because what's going on is not helping. It's not working. Because when you're succeeding at doing something, you show your work. I haven't seen it. And this is my 3rd year on the board. So I say to you all, I'm leaning towards a good yes. And based on what I haven't seen everything, but based on my conversation again with your chief of staff and just her conversation and about the data and how you all use your information that you gather firsthand. I like empirical data. I don't like secondhand. And to utilize that to put together your processes and your plan that works for me. So thank you for this time.
Thank you. Trustee King.
Thank you for your presentation. I was listening to it. Thank you for this bundle of information to digest. I would ask my colleagues to, our chair of academics, we have a committee of the whole. We allow our superintendent and academics team to present that information that's requested from our colleagues about the programs that we have, right? We can actually do that assessment. I think that's what the board has not kind of engaged in a while, right? Because we was focused on fixing some internal struggles, right? Becoming functional, becoming financially literate, basically of school finance, right? Then moving forward, high school, there's a lot that we have been talking about, right? There's been some steps to our progress. The next step, I believe, which what I hear today, is a good conversation to have at an academics council to allow our academics team to present, hey, here's all the programs. I'm hearing colleagues say they don't see the data. Hearing colleagues say about programs that just got reinstated, right? I think it's just time for us to have that academic discussion, and that's what's on the agenda. Because oftentimes, when we have academics on the agenda, there's, like, look at the agenda now. You have so much before it. We never have time to really dial in into academic sites, as I hear my colleagues want. So I would recommend us have our academic chair, or all academic committee of the whole, allow our superintendent to present the programs that we have, and the questions, and we come ready for questions, and we send them so we're able to be answered, and have that discussion. Because some of the things, I mean, we've been presented to several times about academics from MSU partnerships, for all kinds of partnerships, right? If we want to do a deep dive into the programs that we have, let's do it. I'm all for it. But thank you for coming, right? I appreciate the information also highlights which are proven your track record. I appreciate that. But what I hear from my colleagues is that I don't know from what the district is presenting, which, and I would say we do know, but we also set aside time to actually focus on specific academics. That's in my opinion. I would be for having an academic council, we have that conversation first before we approve something like this, right? So we all have a good grasp. That should be my request. Thank you.
We have to go. Point information. We're gonna go by round, and if you want to speak, a purpose to speak, and, you know, so they can just keep it flowing.
I was just gonna let them know this is just a presentation.
Yeah,
It's not an action item.
Thank you.
Trustee Perkins.
Thank you for coming. I really was intently listening to the presentation, and I feel like a lot of your presenting would be of benefit to this district, because I'm looking at the growth that I saw in your presentation. And it's like, put your money where your mouth is, you know, kind of thing with me. One major thing for me is the elementary think that's the foundation of where our scholars will learn. And I liked all of the action items that you presented. I thought it was just really on point. So I kind of lean with Sister Trustee Relaford on that one. So I'm leaning just like she is on that one.
Thank you. Trustee Booth.
I just wanted to say thank you again too for presenting. And I was gonna address Trustee King. You know, we're not voting on anything right now. We're letting them present so that we can hear what they have to say.
Thank you. I think I need to do a little point of information here. Based on last week, you guys were supposed to be here, and we had the council, and we had spoke about you doing your presentation here, and there is an action item on here. There's a couple of things that's on here. But for me to speak on what I have heard, we had you guys to fly in a week or so ago, meet with some of the executive team. The academic team put on a presentation, a great presentation. You guys worked very well and gathered data from that presentation. And I think at that particular, at Southwestern, was the principal, executive director, your chairperson, Linda Booth, myself, and Vice President McIntyre, along with the superintendent staff. One of the reasons that I reached out to you and your company was that for 4 years I sit on this board, and this board was clueless about understanding the data of academics. I reached out to you to actually be a consultant and help this district get out of this downfall. We've been here 4 years. We done invested $156 million from the north side in these different schools. $156 million. Dorado, Vernell's, home. And our children, you stand before us and you said we have improved 1%. I think the parents, we owe these parents. When your parents and your constituents reaching out to you, when are you guys going to do something different? Your teachers are calling. When are we going to do something different? And they deserve that. They deserve it. The parent deserved it. The parent and the teacher help guide this board and making the necessary decision that we need to make. Here it is, 2025. And this district spent $156 million, and the enrollment is still at $2,700. Every time you talk about closing schools, you closing communities, you closing minds, and even the poorest mother, which I was one time. I wanted my child to have a decent education. I wanted to be able, single mom, is go to work knowing that I do not have to drive across town for my child to have the same academic right here in the city of Flint. Our children can do better. They can do better. But we've been doing this for 20-some years. When I came on this board 4 years ago, we still doing the same thing. It's embarrassing to be in the newspaper. It's embarrassing when our school is in the newspaper and our children is like this here, and the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic. We focus more on closing school than academic. This is the first time in 4 years, 4 years on this board, this is the first time that the student is talked about in this capacity. First time that we can just sit down and have this conversation. This board does not understand the data. We don't understand what you're talking about. That's why you asked about the 5%. We don't know that. We got to learn how, as a board, to have a policy. You said that you was counseling, that you come in and you be a consultant for the board. Help us, help the community, and get a grip on these children's education. While we have the opportunity to get a grip on this education. Number two, you offer something. I didn't ask you for nothing. I was telling you about, we're trying to close, they want to close the school in a high taxpayer area, and we call repurposing and closing. Repurposing and closing. Rather than close this particular school, not to call it out, it's another cut. Here you come in with a program, free, offering human math, gonna pay for everything that's in it for our children. They work, whatever this contract say. I done seen her throw away more money than that. But when it comes to this education, it's a problem. We're not saying nothing wrong with MSU, can continue to do what they're doing, but this board needs you to help us, help this community, help the teachers. I listen to the teachers. I am not for closing schools. What I'm for is building a program where parents wake up every morning and say, my child is going to a school that address their issues. We don't have curriculum, what you're talking about, that addressing this issue. I think collectively and collaboratively, we can work together on both sides of the fence. Evidently, there's something missing. 15,000 kids here in Flint, only 2,700 wants to come to your school. We got to listen, we got to have some guts, and put these children first. I've been here 4 years. I'm tired of talking about land. I'm tired of talking about closing. I'm sick of it. My last 2 years in 2026, I guaranteed you we're gonna raise the level of education. The little money that we got, it behold all of us to invest that money into these children. They deserve it. The teachers deserve a raise. They deserve it. They deserve it. They've been poisoned. They done had the pandemic. But one thing I can say about this board, every ESSER dollar, $150-something million, along working with the superintendent, we didn't steal nothing, am I correct? We didn't take nothing. We didn't have to give nothing back. Because what? We wanted to renovate and bring that community back up. But you cannot build a beautiful house and not put something in it. That's right. I'm saying today, it is an action item. You done flew here once, you done flew here twice, and it's time for this board to make a decision. I would love to see Nethercutt School have this program and repurpose it, because it doesn't have to be closed if you put something in it. Anybody else want to speak?
If you don't mind, I'd like to quickly address, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Perkins.
No, you don't spoke. Anybody else want to speak?
Anyone else have?
Teresa,
Okay, Teray.
how many rounds is it? Hold on one second.
Did you want to speak?
No, I'll wait. Yeah, I got it. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms.
Teray, you have anything you want to say? You can.
Never mind. I'm okay. I'm okay.
To call for the question, I might do it. Well, I'm calling for the question.
No, we were just having a discussion, and I think the discussion, probably if there's no more discussion,
I would be remiss if I didn't say, I understand the data. I'm sorry. I think a couple of us do up here, so let me just say that, you all. A couple of us understand the data, but if you don't have it, you can't, analyze it. But first of all,
Well, now, that's a good point.
Okay, yeah, my nerves got bad when you said that, but, I think that for us,
Here we go, God.
You guys just
Oh,
I
man.
should not to highlight that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the students, I think my record speaks for itself, the students and the teachers. That's the core of the district. And if this is going to, one, put our partners on alert, as they say, game on, let's go.
That's right.
You know, somebody else in the end of the field that they beating their chest, this is what we can do. And you've had all these years to do what you're gonna do. And I looked at the MPG report, and I saw the 1%. And that's unacceptable. 1% is unacceptable. And it looks like that's been the last couple of years of being at 1%, and we're better than that. So, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I do gotta say something, I'm sorry. I don't wanna minimize the work this district has been doing as it pertains to academics, because for two and a half years now, been on this board, we finally become functional, stable leadership,
Wow.
civil discussion at the table. This district, in the past, right, you had the Board of Education trampling, arguing back and forth. You had an unstable leadership. There's an unreasonable expectation for us to think that we're supposed to skyrocket after this district has been misled due to lack of leadership prior to us here. Now that we are in a position to lead civilly at the table, respectfully disagree. Our superintendent, we approve our superintendent for a 5-year contract. We have a stable leadership at the table. We have stable leadership in our internal ranks. Now giving our administration team the win to fly versus curtailing them. That's where you see a 1%. But what I see currently, right, I see growth inside of not just our superintendent, our principals, and our teachers. I don't want to minimize the work that has been put in. You have teachers used to be watching live stream 5,000 views to chaos. We no longer have that. You don't have to worry about teachers worrying about what happened at the board meeting last night, or educators you don't have to worry about that. Now it's up to us as a Board of Education that's now functional and strongly united to demand more. I'm with you with that. But I don't want to minimize the fact that now we have to become stable and functional. That's when we start seeing growth. But prior years, we haven't seen growth due to the fact of unstable leadership. Now we have it. I just want to make sure I say that because it is, it's frustrating to hear us talk about plans and, closing buildings, because at the end of the day, student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. Adult behaviors change at this table. And until we continue to change, right, student outcomes will change. Closing buildings, I understand it. I've been through all the school closures. I've been through. Anyone at the table been through school closures? I get the effect. Yes, I do. But keeping buildings open with low utilization rate closes opportunities for kids that when you have non-certified teachers teaching them. I'm hearing it to my colleagues. I cannot go without saying, I want to commend the work that we've been doing. Yes, we can do more. But to hear the minimization and that comments, it was just, I just couldn't let it go, because you got to give us credit for being functional
And civil, at the table as we supposed to be, that's the expectation, finally getting there. And I'm excited to see what we do moving forward with the civilness and the functionality. Thank you.
This is crazy. No.
Yes, I want to say.
God.
Okay.
This ain't doing nothing. They saying who can out talk
Do
who.
you board members have any more comments?
I do want to address trustee King. I don't think we minimizing anyone. What we said, it is time to step out of the box and move forward as it relates to growth of a child, of a student. It's easy for an adult to grow because all you got to do is kind of sit back and listen and pay attention, take some classes. So if there's any dysfunction, that is because of this lack of ignorance. However, we're talking about the growth of the students, not the adults. We're not putting down any department in this board. Every car should have a spare. And right now, we need that spare because we're running out of time. And if we're gonna turn this around, because I'm requesting, is a plea, in order for us to get through this legislation, we're gonna need parents to bring your children back to Flint Public School. The reason that I have you here, you've been talking to my ear, you've been speaking to me. Been here 20 years, created a school, early childhood school, at-risk school, and parents, your children can read. Achievement is about confidence. We got to build this community confident back up. Our children should be happy getting up, coming to Flint Public School. Charter school has just as many problems as we have. They don't have all our certified teachers. They have a belief system. Even when the child is spelling, we're saying that I'm asking these experts to come in to give us a helping hand for your children. This is about the children. We're gonna have to galvanize, we're gonna have to come together as a community. You're gonna have to come back into these public schools where Flint has control over the academic. We have control in this public school. We have great teachers. We have great substitute teachers. And let's not forget our paraprofessionals. Let's not forget our neighborhood association. And I called every last one of them, and some of you are on Zoom, because I wanted you to see, you've been asking me, I got special need kids, I got handicapped kids. If I die today, you got grandmother raising children. If I die today, I'm concerned that they won't make it to the next level. I didn't come on this board to make sure that adults have a better behavior issue. I came on this board and I took an oath for the greater outcome of the children. And I really thank you for what you have offered us. I would like to move forward. Because Eric, I'm not saying that I can read the data, but the data that you give me, but I don't understand where this data is coming from. This is what I'm talking about. You can give me a spreadsheet, you can put on the greatest PowerPoint. I cannot dive into that and find out where little Joe is, where little Mary is at. What's going on at their house? Why are they failing? The board has that responsibility. And the 4 years I've been out here, and I've heard a couple of my trustees, I've been listening to them. They have issues. They want to get out into the community. We want to get involved in a whole lot of things. But we got to understand this academic. It's easy for you to come in here and show me a bunch of bullet points, and that's good. But this is nice up on the board. This is not putting anybody down. The board needs to understand and listen to the community. That is what we're doing. I appreciate you. I'm not gonna hold you up a long time. And if we can pass this up, I would love to see this in another covering purpose.
Yes, ma'am, and I appreciate that, but I would like to say a few things before you guys are done. First of all, I want to thank you guys again for the opportunity to come and speak with you, and I'd like to address a few things. You mentioned the concept of doing something different. You're looking at different. That's what I've been doing all of my years in education. So one of the things I want to make sure I make clear, we have been why I've have survived so long in this business, which is a very cutthroat business. The reason I've survived so long is because we make a difference where we go. People call us when they're in need, and we come. When I was asked to come to Flint, I just thought about the idea of, okay, wait, why would I come to this cold place up here? Why would I come to this place? I mean, but I came on my own dime, because I want to make a difference. That's what I've been doing. That's what I care about. I'm not here to necessarily make money. Yes, I don't want to go broke doing this. And the people that work for me need to make a living. But I want to make a difference. And that's why we're here. And I don't know what else is going on in your district, but I can guarantee you they're not going to make a difference like we do. Now, one more thing I'd like to really address that you mentioned earlier, and that's the fact that we do guarantee the work that we do. We do that in every contract that we offer, because we basically come in. That's why we have to go through this process, because we have to figure out exactly what's going on, and then lay out some specific goals that you all agree to, and then we go forward from there. Now, those goals will be measurable, and you will have constant reporting from us to show that we're actually working toward those goals. Whether we're being successful or not, you will know. And last but not least, I want to just make sure that this is clear. When it comes to making a difference in the district, we don't just want to come and make money. We leave money behind. We give back to the communities we work in all the time. And so I don't know what's been going on up here, but I do want to be a part of what's happening now. And so I'll leave it up to you guys to decide. Tracy.
Well, being a former superintendent, I just keep locking eyes with you, Kevin said, Dr. Doe, superintendent. It is important that we work together, because there is so much information that the superintendent and his executive team have that will help us craft a plan that is based on need and for improvement for the system. And that can only happen when we take a deep dive. What I hear Trustee Relliver said is she got the data, she know it, she own it, right? Then over here, well, I ain't never seen the data. Right there's a discrepancy. Something is happening in the system, and we all have to have open minds. Maybe it's that you don't understand the data, and how do we make it plain enough for you to say, oh, I got it, right? And maybe those conversations aren't happening, or maybe they are happening. But I want to be clear about this work is definitely a partnership with the superintendent and his team, because that's the only way we're going to get to a better outcome. And then to Trustee Luna, like I have to tell you when you said vendor, Urban Superintendents Collaborative is a group of superintendents who do work. We partner with folks who want to be partners, not vendors. We don't take everybody's money, because everybody ain't for kids. One of the things that I liked about Green Solution was how many people have come to this table and said, if we don't do it, we're going to discount or give it back or give you more money. Like, we're not going to just take your money and say, oh, well, it was the kids. We want to work with people who want to work with districts and give back. I think when I sat down with the superintendent and the board president and they told me the story of Flint, I haven't even told you my history of turnaround. I turn around schools and I turn around districts, right? Because I care about kids. Because all the money in the world don't change a child's life. If they exit our system and they're not prepared, then that is on us, each one of us. And we have to highlight the teachers. Like, so when we talk about the work, when I saw the graduation initiative, there are people in this building that you might not even know doing amazing things. How can we highlight that and bring that to the forefront with the superintendent and the board, right? Notice I keep saying the superintendent and the board. While I know that the board is contracting us, that work can't be efficient and effective if we are not working as one. And that would happen after we come up with a plan that the superintendent would say, yes, this makes sense to me. This is where we could grow, because this is already amazing. Yes. But I do believe anytime any system thinks 1% is enough, then I ask them what they want to be the 99% left behind. Damn. Not for my kid. And my kid had a special education. She had an IEP. She graduated on time and went to a 4-year college and got done. Because there's a high expectation for every kid who walks through the door. And we appreciate the opportunity, and the opportunity might not be the right opportunity, but we have had discussions, so that is how we showed up today, based on discussions we have had and how we can support.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy Davis and Wendell Green. Your presentation was very good. We appreciate you for taking time to come all the way to Michigan to present to us and our audience. Now I'll turn this meeting back over to the board president.
Thank you, Trustee Booth and Green Education. Board member, I'm seeking a motion and a second from the board to approve the Urban Superintendent Collaborative and Green Education Service proposal.
I don't approve.
Board President, I make a motion to approve the Urban Superintendent's Collaborative Inc. and Green Education Services proposal.
Is there second?
Support.
I am.
Madam Chair.
There's been a motion by Claudia and a second by Linda Booth. It had been properly moved and second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I did. Where did, I thought this was just a presentation, not an action item. So I'm wondering where on the agenda that we agreed this was supposed to be action item versus a presentation. Because I didn't come here today, I came here to listen, I didn't come here to vote on the contract we just got today and not yesterday, and not last week.
Here we is.
Thank you.
Right, so I'm done. I'm
Okay.
done.
You're
So,
done?
no, not yet.
Is it a motion already?
Yeah, it's
Motion
motion
is
second, yeah. And he just having a discussion. He's saying how.
Yeah, 100%. Just speaking my comments. Yeah. I wasn't prepared, and we talked about no surprises, right? I wasn't prepared to, vote for a contract tonight. And if I'm not mistaken, right, this is contract here we talked about, right? That's what we're voting on? Okay, thanks.
Trustee, Relaford.
I wasn't ready to vote. But after the presentation, why wait?
Give me the little piece about it.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Trustee.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, I said that I was still processing information, and that doesn't mean I'm not ready to go. I'm gonna be processing information, because you're the type of partners who are always gonna be giving me a lot of homework. I can see that. So, and I appreciate that, and that's what I've been asking for, and that's what I need. I'm quite frankly surprised that there's surprise by my colleagues or my fellow trustees, because this isn't your first trip to Michigan. And we've had a lot of information. You've done a presentation before. This is the public one. This is the one we're sharing with the public. So I appreciate that, and, you know, I look forward to working with you if this goes through.
Any more discussions? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to approve the Urban Superintendent Collaborative Incorporation and Green Education Service, voted by roll call vote. Trustee King?
No.
Trustee Relaford?
Yes.
Trustee Luna?
Yes.
Secretary Perkins?
Yes.
Trustee Booth?
Yes.
Vice President McIntyre?
Yes.
And myself, yes. 6 yes, 1 no. The motion passed. Thanks very much. We have, I know you guys got to get on the road and you got to catch a plane, but right in the back here, Cam can come assist you. We make sure that you have something to eat, refreshment. Thank you.
We'll be having a Dr. Carvel on.
He's coming in.
And in the future, like, not necessarily right now.
Oh, okay.
I'd love for you to meet with him, because it would fit seamlessly with what you're doing. He's one of our people.
Is he on now? That's a great honor. Now I would like to turn the floor over to Vice President McIntyre for the introduction of our next presenter. And this would be Vice.
Right now, I'd like to introduce a very good friend of mine, a colleague, a fellow sociologist. He was a former president of the Michigan Sociological Association. He's a professor at the Henry Ford College, Flint, native, Flint born and raised. His dad's still living here. I apologize, Dr. Harville, I can't remember your high school, but I told you you had to give your own introduction. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Calvin Harville to the board and to the community, because he's got a lot of exciting things to share. Dr. Harville?
Good evening. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. You know how these microphones are. One day they're working fine, the next day they are not. I want to make sure that you all can hear me well. First of all, I'd like to say thank you all for allowing me to come into this particular space. I see this as a privilege. I want to give a greeting to the honorable board of Flint Public Schools. I want to, I guess, start off by saying that I am not a benevolent outsider who thinks they know what's best for Flint or what's best for the kids in Flint or what's best for the schools in Flint. I actually care about Flint. As Professor McIntyre has said, I was born and raised in Flint. This is my first time hearing that Nethercutt is going to be closing. I went to Nethercutt School, and then I went to Flint Academy, the real Flint Academy on McClellan Street, and then we, of course, transferred over to Flint Southwestern Academy. I graduated from Flint Southwestern Academy. I am, as Vice President McIntyre has said, a professor of sociology at Henry Ford College. But today, what I wanted to talk about is an organization that I work with, that I essentially am the coordinator of. I coordinate something called the Black Male Queens Focus Group. It's an academic and social support network for students on the campus of Henry Ford College. However, we work outside of that particular college. What we essentially do is we do everything to make sure that students are going to be successful, not only in terms of college, but in terms of getting the necessary skills that they need to go forward, to graduate from college, to transfer to the next space and do whatever it is that they essentially need to do. Now, one of the things that we always focus on is that we do not focus on how things should be. I think too often we focus on how things should be, how things need to be. We have to focus on the realities that are at hand. So we have to focus on issues such as food insecurity, focus on issues such as housing insecurity, focus on issues, and I love what you all were saying about having the parents involved, but we have to focus on the reality of the situation that some parents are just not going to be involved. And so what do we do as educators to essentially fill in those particular gaps? And again, notice I'm not saying it's some type of an achievement gap. We don't believe in that. We believe in an access gap. And what we argue in terms of the focus group is that as long as students have access, they can be successful in anything, and they will be successful. So as I said, we're an academic and social support network. What our research has found, this is the research that I've done within my particular group, and this is some national research as well, is that students' academic problems, a lot of times we dismiss students, we discount students, because we're always operating from a deficit model. What we have found is that these academic problems really are more or less social problems, i.e., if I'm suffering from food insecurity, how can you expect me to engage in reading, writing, and arithmetic? If I'm suffering from housing insecurity, how can you expect me to want to read the next Walt Whitman poem? Stuff has no meaning to me. And I want to be honest with you, I was one of those students that did not have a connection properly in terms of school. I don't want to say anything bad about, it's not a critique of Flint Public School. This is a lot of just me, just stuff just didn't connect with me. It wasn't until I was able to find those types of connections to where education became extremely valuable for me. So today, and I'm not coming here again to ask you all for something. I'm coming here to sort of share and talk about some of the work that I've been doing, because every time that I volunteer in Flint, every time that I get to talk in Flint, one of the things that I keep getting asked is, how come your group does not serve Flint in a sense? How come you all not working in Flint? So for example, my group, my college students also come and they volunteer.
Family, I'm up out of here. I got a bounce.
Several volunteer days in Flint. My students, while they were volunteering, they've done